How's it going, everybody? It's Ryan here. Okay, so I want to talk about something that I think is really important. And that is that I talk to a lot of people that either they don't think that they could actually retire, but they actually probably could afford to retire now. Or I'll talk to people that think that, they need to work for, maybe another 6 or 8 years, something like that. But the reality is they could probably afford to retire in another 2 or 3 years. And I say this is important because I've talked to many people over the years that have felt like, I just don't know that I've saved enough. I kind of feel guilty. I feel like I probably should have saved more. It's kind of like the guy that I talked about last week. He basically expressed to me his guilt about not saving and investing as much as he probably should have over the years, and now feels like he just needs to continue working because he just doesn't have enough for him and his wife, and he kind of feels some guilt about that, like he should have been putting more money away, and now they're not going to be able to enjoy their younger years, perhaps, of retirement. And I say this also because it's important, because, like, let's say you're 65, just as a round number, and let's say you actually could afford to retire, but you don't feel like you can. Life's short, right? There's only so many years that we have on this earth, and so it's if we can afford to do it and you want to do it. Like, I talk to some people that are in a job that they really don't like, or they're just burned out, or whatever it is. If they won the lottery, they would retire. And so if you can and you want to, then it makes sense to really take a deep dive under the hood and see if it can be a possibility. So I kind of mentioned, I was talking to this guy last week, and that's what made me want to put together this video, because he expressed to me his guilt about not saving and investing as much as he probably should over the years. And now he's probably got to continue to work much longer. So it has a happy ending. So that's the good news. But let me go ahead and share my screen here with you, and I'll walk you through exactly what we looked at together. So let me bring me over. So here's the setup. Now, this isn't his exact situation. I did, it's based off of him. He actually is 66. I actually don't know his wife's age, but I just made her the same age as him. So we've got a hypothetical couple. I like to use the names John and Jane. So I've got Jane, or John and Jane Sample. They're both 66 years old. And what we wanted to take a look at was if he were to retire, and she's already retired. She's been retired for several years. So if he were to retire next year, so he's going to continue to work for one more year and retire when he's 67. And it was interesting because what I asked him, I said, when you retire, how much would you want to be able to live on? And he said, well, my salary is $75,000 here today. You can see that right here, 75,000. I'd really like to be able to live on that amount today. And so, as I explained to him, and I'll say here as well, is it really doesn't matter. Let me move me around here. It really doesn't matter what you're looking for gross. In other words, before tax. What really matters is the after tax, because while you're working, you also have to pay FICA taxes, right, for Social Security, Medicare, that sort of thing. So all we really need to take a look at is how much do you need on an after-tax basis. And so that's where he said, if I can have $5,000 a month, if we can, him and his wife, that ideally is what we would want. But again, I don't think we can do it, right? I said, okay, well, let's take a look. So that's the 5,000. And then what we also did on top of the 5,000 is we factored in some additional costs for healthcare. So we've got my program automatically calculates the cost for Medicare Part B and D. And then we factor in an extra $1,000 a year for out-of-pocket healthcare costs. So on top of the 5,000. Okay. All right. So that was the goal. Retire next year on $5,000. And let me see if there's anything else but I need to show you. Oh, yeah. So in net worth, so this is what he had accumulated. So they've got $15,000 in a checking account, and he's got about $350,000 in a 401k. Okay. So basically for retirement, he's going to be able to draw money from the 401k, and then they're going to have money coming from their Social Security as well. So let's take a look and see how it looked. So based on their goals, they had a 35% probability of success. So this is the software that I use. If we watch any of my other videos, it's based on over 1,000 different Monte Carlo simulations and stress tests and that sort of thing. So based on what he said, he was absolutely, or what he thought, he was absolutely correct. I mean, they've only got a 35% chance of their retirement plan working out. In other words, for them to have enough money until their life expectancy or their planning horizon. In their case, he said, I want to be able to make sure that I've got enough money until we're 90 at least. After that, if we're on Social Security, okay, but I want to make sure we have enough at least until we're 90. So that was the goal. So this is where we have to get to work, because 35% is not going to be acceptable, right? We've got roughly a 2/3 chance that we're going to run out of money during retirement. So let's take a look and see what we could do. So the first thing is Social Security. So the plan right now is to take Social Security at 67. That's the current strategy. Let me just see if I change that to 70, if that improves it or not. Nope, that does not. We can see there's only a 23% probability of success. So I want to keep that the current strategy just for now. Okay, now here's the thing, and this is what I think is really important, is that what I typically find is that when people are in retirement, they don't spend in a straight line. And what I mean by that is that with most people, they want to spend most of their money that they have available to them in their earlier years of retirement. And then as they get into their later years of retirement, they're going to start to spend less. And I refer to this as, and other people have referred to this as well as, like the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. So the go-go years are, usually like in his case, let's say they retired next year when they're 67. So it could be from 67 to, like I did in this example, until they're 75. So let's say during that time period, those next 8 years, they're going to, maybe do some traveling, go out to eat more often, whatever it is. They're going to be active and out there and just doing things. And then typically what happens is after that, we call it the slow go years. Maybe you're now done doing the big traveling, the big vacation to Europe you've been wanting to do, or whatever it is. And now you just want to slow it down a little bit. And you're not going to spend as much. So now, like based on the example I've got for them, you'll see here in a second, I've got the slow go years starting at 76, going to age 85. And then after the age of 85, they're going to get into their no-go years. So they're going to continue to spend even less. Okay, so let's see how this looks. 35% probability of success. Let's go back over to the goals here. And what you can see is we've got the $5,000 expense that they want. And I'm also adjusting that for inflation. But instead of this, here's the go-go years. And I'm going to factor in an amount on the next screen that's going to show how much they're going to have in the go-go years between ages 67 to 75. And then the slow-go years between 76 to 85. And again, the no-go years are going to be from 86 to 100. Now, this is your plan. We can obviously make any adjustments to those ages and such, but this seemed like a real good starting point for what we were looking at. So let's go back over here and let's plug in some numbers. So some numbers that we had started with. Remember, they wanted to be able to spend $5,000 a month. So I'm going to move that down to 0. And instead of just looking at it as we're going to do $5,000 a month, and then we're going to increase that for inflation for the rest of our life. Instead, what if they did $5,000 a month initially during the go-go years? And so I have to put an annual amount into this. So that's 60,000. Okay, 5,000 times 12. So 60,000. Whoops, wrong line. Right here. And then in the slow go years, what if we scale that down to 54,000? Now, again, that's in today's dollars. This is still going to factor in inflation, and it's going to increase that. And then in the no-go years, what if we went down to 48,000? Okay, let's take a look and see how this looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press refresh. Big difference, right? They just went from 35% probability of success up to a 74% probability of success. Now, still not happy at 74. We've got to increase that, but that made a huge difference. And they would still be able to spend the amount they'd want to spend for the next 8 years, and then start scaling it back a little bit, as you saw right there. Now, the other thing that came up is I asked John, I said, I know you would love to be able to stop working at your job. Is there a part-time job or anything like that that you may want to do? Or for instance, because I have many people that they don't actually need to work, but they just want to work, maybe part-time, whatever the case might be, just because a little extra income definitely helps, but it also just kind of fills the time. And so he said, absolutely. If I can get out just for a few hours, doing something, that would be great. So I said, well, let's just factor in, a part-time job. I mean, what if you just made $10,000 a year? Nothing big, just $10,000 in a year. That now brought the probability of success from 74% to 91%. And by the way, that part-time job, we assumed that he would do that until he was 75 years old. So that's, going all through the go-go years, basically. But just making 10 grand. So it's just a part-time job. I mean, if he, maybe he made 15,000, during that period of time, what would that do? That would increase it up to 94%. And he actually said, yeah, I could do, let's assume that I make that $15,000, I find something. Then I said, okay. I said, we're at 94%. That's a pretty high probability of success. It's not 100, but we can always make little tweaks along the way. And anything 90% plus, typically I feel very confident in. And so I said, well, what if we could increase the amount of money here? And so we took a look at increasing the go-go years a little bit. And so we said, okay, instead of 60, what if we did 65,000 the first year? How would that look? So 88%. Okay, brought it down a little bit, not a ton. But the key thing is here is that, and again, this is going to be on a case-by-case basis. So your situation is going to vary from your neighbor, from your friend, everything else. But it makes sense not just to look at your expenses in retirement. It's just something based on a straight line. Again, a lot of people like to spend more of their money sooner and then kind of scale down how much they spend over the years. The other thing is when you're accounting for your expenses in retirement, which is important to do when making the decision to retire, to know what your expenses are. Oftentimes I will find that people that have a mortgage, such as a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, don't factor in that the payment is fixed, and just factor that in as a part of the expenses. So we need to itemize that out so we know how much is fixed, those costs, versus how much the costs that are actually going to go up with the overall inflation rate and such. So, or at least projected inflation rate that we can assume. Hopefully this made sense. Just know there's a lot of different levers. There's a lot of different things that we can do, not just from the budgeting, but also from the strategy standpoint and things like that. So if you would like to retire, don't think you can retire, oftentimes it at least makes sense to have a conversation. If I can help, get in touch with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.